you should have Android Studio installed and everything is set up. If you don't have that, please go to Google, type Android Studio install, and then install Android Studio, and make sure to also create emulators. Okay. Now, one thing you need to keep in mind is that the emulators we're going to be using for this to actually work, I'm just going to save you a lot of headaches and time, is a little bit different in the sense that, let's go back to our AVD, Android Virtual Device Manager. Click here. This is where you will control, or you can create virtual devices, i.e. Android emulator. I've created one that says Pixel 4 API 30. Now, I would recommend you to have at least API 30 when you create this one, because that will really help. And also make sure that you create one that has a Play Store so that it works nicely, plays nicely with Google services and so forth. Most importantly, you need to create one that has CPU or ABI x86_64. All of that happens when you create a new device. So if you click here, create a new device, you wouldn't have that device, obviously. I'm just going to pick this one just because I want to demonstrate for you. Next, and I'm going to go to x86 images. You can see now there are differences, right? There is the R30 x86 only, and there is the R API level 30 x86_64. This is what you need to pick for this system image. Very, very important. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of issues trying to run the Flutter app onto your Android device and or emulator. Okay, so when you create, you must create a new emulator and pick anything that has x86-64. Make sure it's at least 60 API level, and then go ahead next and create that image. Okay, that's really important. Okay, otherwise you're going to have issues. All right. So I'm just going to get rid of this. I'll get out of here because I already have one with x86_64 CPU ABI there. And of course, from here, you can go ahead and run it, but we're going to do that manually using our code editor. Okay, so back to the world of the living. In this case, our code editor, Visual Studio Code. The best there is, I think. Anyway, so we're back here and we understand that at this point we should have created or added all of these little pieces that we needed to do. And now let's start testing and see if we can run this indeed on an emulator. Okay, so what I'm going to do, first of all, let's go ahead and select that emulator. So I'm going to say Command Control or Control Shift P. I'm going to go ahead and select device, Flutter device as such. You should have options now. If you have created at least a few emulators, Android emulators, you should have options to a few of them. So in this case here, make sure you get, again, the Start Pixel 4 API 30 Flutter. Now, you could have named anything you want, but I added this so that it's easier for me to know exactly which emulator to use when running Flutter Android apps. Okay? It's very crucial, especially when we are dealing with Flutter stores and other things in the back end. Okay, so I'm going to select that like this, and it's going to start launching, as you see here, that API, that emulator. And there it is. It may take, again, like I said, a few minutes for the emulator to wake up. So be patient. It's all good. If all goes well, after a few seconds, hopefully less than minutes, you should see that we have our emulator ready to run. Okay, now it's time for us to test things out. Let me make this a little bit smaller so we have more space for both. All right, so we are going to open our terminal, new terminal at the bottom there. There it is. Okay, I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger so you can see. Okay, what we're gonna do first. The first thing we need to do, of course, is to run. Now, we're not gonna run under debugging, although we could, but we're gonna just go straight and give it a run. So we're gonna just run straight on release mode onto the device. And hopefully we've done everything that we needed to do to make things work. So I'm gonna say Flutter run -- release. Hit enter. There we go. It's assembling everything. And just keep in mind that this may take a little while, so take your time and wait until it does everything it needs to do. Maybe it's time to take a bathroom break or a coffee break or a tea break, whatever it is that you drink. And voila, you can see now at some point, and there you have it. It's running indeed on an Android emulator. So we can go ahead and click here, say sign in. get started, let's sign in with John because we know that John exists. So john@me.com, say sign in. And right away, we run into some issues here. Okay, what's really going on? Well, it says like it's not a type of subtype double, new book. So we have a problem getting the information from our server, from our database, because there's some issues with the types. And I kind of know what the problem is here. The problem is that the types that we're getting or adding to our book, each book has the rating value, right? The 4.5 or 3.5 or 3.0 and so forth. Somehow on Android, the actual device Android, it doesn't know how to deal with it. But anything else is working. So if I click here, notice there it is. Everything is there. What is the problem? What happens if I go and search for something? If I say Flutter, hit enter, and voila, things are working perfectly. I can click here, go ahead and click. I can read the information about the book. So most of the app is working. I can go ahead and save. I'm probably going to have an issue. Let's see, go back. Of course, we still have some problems there, okay? So what is the problem? Well, first of all, let's go back and sign out. I can sign out. I'm going to create a new account just to see if the problem persists. I'm going to say litos@me.com, tester like this. Let's say create account. Litos was created. And we still have the same problems, which are these problems there. So if Litos try to add a new book, again, Flutter, hit enter. Okay, add something like this. And go back. And Litos is there. Of course, the picture is kind of still the same because it's all random. But that does not matter. I'm going to click here. And you see Litos has null for profession and so forth. So it's working, but there are some issues that we need to work on. And that's what we're going to do in the next videos.